Since 2015, Jared Stillman has rocked Nashville sports.
That team freaking stinks.
And now he's back. The takes are hotter than ever.
I mean, let's be honest, he just can't coach.
Welcome to Stillman and Company.
Stillman and Company of the 440 Sports Network, presented by Hiller Plumbing, Heating, Cooling, and Electrical. Here today on the program on YouTube at Stillman & Co. Like and subscribe. That's what I always tell you people out there. I'm always like, hey, if you want to get Jared a Christmas gift, like and subscribe to the Stillman & Company program. And boy, what a loaded show we have today. I did talk to a former NFL general manager when it comes to Cam Ward, what that former NFL general manager told me. We'll get to that. And again, what I think we need to discuss on the Cam front. I also have Paul Kaharski all mad at me, which we, of course, will get into. How could we possibly miss that? Old man Phillip Rivers has decided to come out of retirement. We'll get to that. Diego Pavia is a Heisman finalist. We'll get to that. And Will Bolling at 104.5 broke the sanctity of the team playing, which, for those of you that know how this works, very, very bad, which we, of course, will get to. And again, as we have Zach on the YouTube chat says, like and subscribe. Again, I agree. Like and subscribe. And then, oh, by the way, we're going to have the Jalen Hurts discussion today on the program, just because, let's not kid ourselves. I got everybody after the Super Bowl wanted to talk to me about Jalen Hurts, and I kept saying Jalen Hurts ain't that good. So we'll have the Jalen Hurts discussion. Let's start off the top. I have talked to a former NFL general manager about Cam Ward, a former NFL general manager who has a Super Bowl ring about Cam Ward. And that former NFL general manager said one word to me. And the Cam contingency out there, the Cam contingency out there of people that don't want to hear this ain't going to like this. But it was during the game on Sunday. I sent a former NFL general manager, again, a former NFL general manager with a Super Bowl ring. I sent a former NFL general manager a text, and you can see it right there on the screen, in which I said, Cam stinks. And that former NFL general manager, again, with a Super Bowl ring, had one word in response. Yep. Just acknowledging that they think Cam stinks. Now, you don't know who that general manager is, and I already see Adam from Portland in the YouTube chat saying, is he a former general manager because he fucking sucks? Because I know you're going to say that this general manager, who I'm not going to reveal their identity, you're going to say he's no good. You might think I made it up. You can say whatever you want. But the truth is, a former general manager in the NFL thinks Cam Ward stinks when he's watching the games right now. And that takes me to this, which is something that I guess I don't seem to understand, which is we're 13 games into Cam Ward's career. By every metric, Cam Ward is one of the worst quarterbacks in the NFL, if not the worst. According to QBR, he is 31st in the NFL out of 31 qualifiers. According to PFF, his passing grade is a lower than that of Spencer Rattler. He's right there at the bottom when it comes to passing grade. As far as the quarterback position is concerned right now, he is down there at the bottom. He is 40th in the league amongst qualifying passers. J.J. McCarthy is ahead of him. Tyrod Taylor is ahead of him. Geno Smith is ahead of him. Spencer Rattler is ahead of him. Justin Fields is ahead of him. Davis Mills is ahead of him. Tyler Shuck is ahead of him. Kyler Murray is ahead of him. Jacoby Brissett is ahead of him. Kirk Cousins is ahead of him. Joe Flacco is ahead of him. Jackson Dart is ahead of him. The only ones below him, Shedeur Sanders, Jake Browning, Carson Wentz, Dylan Gabriel. That's it. So by every metric, Cam Ward stinks. A former NFL general manager is telling me Cam Ward stinks. And yet, for some reason, so many of you people just want to sit up there and say, no. Cam Ward does not stink, Jared. No. It's everybody else's fault. No, Jared. He's our guy. And here's the issue that I have. I don't have an issue with saying, hey, what are we going to do? Except they've already drafted Cam Ward. So let's watch Cam Ward play this year and let's go from there. Which is, again, if I own this football team, that's exactly how we would operate. Is Cam Ward would be the starting quarterback for the rest of the year. I'd fire everybody, start over, and I'd let that general manager whom I hire decide what they're going to do, big picture and in the immediate with the Titans coaching staff and roster and everything else. But what I can't understand is the amount of people out there who just pretend like there's no way the Titans made the wrong choice. And there's no reason, once you realize you've made the wrong choice, there's no reason to keep chasing after it. Again, I'm not saying they should bench Cam, but are you sure Fernando Mendoza isn't better than Cam? And if you're in position to draft Fernando Mendoza, are you sure that Fernando Mendoza doesn't stink? Because right now we're looking at Cam Ward and we're thinking, Cam Ward kind of stinks. And I've said, if I owned the team at the end of the year, I would clean house. Goodbye, Brinker. Goodbye, Borgonzi. The coaching staff already knows they're on their way out, so that wouldn't be very difficult. But goodbye. Goodbye, everybody. We're starting over. That's what I would do. And I would hire an experienced general manager that I would put fully in charge of the operation. And an example I've used is Rick Spielman. And Rick Spielman right now is a senior advisor with the Jets. Thomas Dimitrov is another example I've used. But again, it doesn't have to be one of those guys, but it has to be somebody who has been a general manager in the NFL before, has run the operation. So not one of these guys like George Payton in Denver who answers to Sean Payton, but I mean a real general manager who has run an operation and has run an operation successfully. And I'd say, we're going to do whatever you want to do. And that includes with Cam Ward, because I'm not married to Cam Ward. I never wanted to be married to Cam Ward. I never thought Cam Ward was good. And in 13 games, Cam Ward has not shown me anything to make me think that I was wrong. Cam Ward has not shown me anything to make me think that he can be a franchise quarterback. And I know their general manager got wooed by Ward for one reason or another, whether it's the Mahomes comp, whether it's the confidence at the combine, whether it's the fact that they didn't want to pay Sam Darnold, whether it's the fact that they didn't like Mac Jones, whatever it may be. And yet that former general manager thinks the Titans made the wrong choice. Again, I've said I'd go hire Rick Spielman or Thomas Dimitrov, or again, name me a former general manager who's had success. That's who we're going to hire. That's who's going to run the operation. That's who's going to decide what we do at quarterback next year and the year after that. But this was Rick Spielman last year when he hosted a podcast on CBS Sports with the first pick. And this is what he was saying about Cam Ward at the beginning of the season, in the middle of the season, and after the season. And here's what he said. Take a listen.
I don't think he'll make that big a push. I agree with all the strengths and weaknesses. I don't like some of the decision-making, though. I think he puts the ball up in harm's way when he doesn't have to. Again, another guy that relies on his unique athletic ability. But I do think it'll be interesting to see if he can take that next leap forward down at Miami. Anxious to see him. But I have him right now in the 4th, 5th round range. And I'll give you, just to expedite this process, my comp, Tyrod Taylor.
Comps. What's your comp for Cam Ward?
I'm not going to go off my comps, what I said earlier.
I think he is a better version of a Tyrod Taylor. That's where I'm going to lay in my comp.
It's not a great quarterback class because if you stack the Cam Ward, you stack Shadir Sanders, I don't know if they would sure be behind the top 3 quarterbacks that were taken last year. And you could argue with Penix, you can argue with J.J. McCarthy, and you may even argue with Bo Nix, who was the last quarterback taken at the number 12th overall with the Denver Broncos. So if you need a quarterback this year, and I understand you have the first-round pick, and this is what goes on in those draft rooms, is that, geez, Mason Graham is much better at his position than maybe Cam Ward is his. So you end up forced to take a quarterback, but you're leaving some really good players that are probably better at their position on that draft board. And that's something that the dilemma of a general manager and head coach have to make. So do they need a quarterback? Yes. Can they maybe look at a bridge guy? Can they look at a potential trade? You're going to go through all those scenarios. But if you do end up with Cam Ward, then that's our guy, and let's move forward. But the problem is they're not the best players in this year's draft.
I mean, does that sound like somebody who wants to take Cam Ward? Again, this is somebody who said, hey, I see the strengths and weaknesses. I mean, my comp for him is Tyrod Taylor. And he said, hey, he's the top quarterback in the class, sure. But he wouldn't compare to Caleb Williams, Jaden Daniels, or Drake May. He's probably more like J.J. McCarthy, who, by the way, sucks. I mean, hey, if you take him, you're not taking the best player in the draft, but I mean, I guess you're taking him. And so that's where I am on the Cam Ward front, which is I think we need to have the discussion. I think we need to be honest here. And we need to say, is Cam Ward bad? Should the Titans, if they find themselves in position to draft a Fernando Mendoza, should they be having that discussion? Now, I know what's going to happen. What's going to happen is the Titans are going to double down on Cam. I don't think the Titans are going to fire anybody at the end of the year, which I think is a bad decision. But again, Amy always makes the bad decisions when it comes to who to fire, when to fire, how many people to fire. I think they've already done their firing. I think Callahan is it. So Brian Callahan gets fired, Chad Brinker stays, Mike Borgonzi stays, and they're going to double down on Cam. But again, let's use recent Titans history in front of us. And let me ask you, was it a good idea to double down on Ran Carthon? Ran Carthon proved he was incompetent as a general manager in 1 year. He proved it. They doubled down. They promoted him. And by promoting him, they allowed him to draft J.C. Latham. They allowed him to draft Tavondre Sweat. They allowed him to let Derrick Henry walk. They allowed him to hire Brian Callahan. They allowed him to trade for L'Jarius Sneed. They allowed him to sign Lloyd Cushenberry. Was that a good idea? I mean, again, to me, that was preposterous. Jared, you need to give Ran a chance. This time last year, we were sitting right there talking about these guys, about the Carthons and the Brinkers and the Callahans. And Callahan was certainly on the hot seat. And they decided, no, we want to give him another chance. And the truth about the Brian Callahan thing is that was a disaster. It has already become a complete and total gong show because of their decision to retain Callahan. Again, I never liked Cam Ward. I thought he was a first-round talent. I thought he needed work and he needed to develop and everything else. But at the same time, I definitely didn't think that Brian Callahan was the right coach to try to develop a young quarterback. And if you don't think your coach is good enough to develop a young quarterback, you got to fire the coach. But the Titans didn't do that. Well, let's see how Callahan looks with his own quarterback. And again, that has already had disastrous repercussions because by keeping Callahan, any shot Cam would have had to develop, you've already screwed up. So I have to ask, other than just sitting there and hoping that Cam Ward becomes a good quarterback eventually, what is the hope? Again, one former general manager tells me he stinks. Another former general manager, when he was in the media, kept telling you this is not a guy you want to draft. He's Tyrod Taylor. And this is the reason why I get so worked up about this. Because I don't want to waste any more time of my life watching the Titans wander through the desert like Moses for 40 years, hoping that they can win and that they can compete and that they can give us compelling football on Sundays. I'm ready for the Titans to be good again. You know, it's funny. Everybody seems to think I have some sort of crazy agenda. PK on the football show this morning was all mad at me, talking about this little show, which, by the way, gets better numbers than his show. This little show, and about how Jared Stillman's opinion doesn't matter. And I think it kills PK deep down inside. And I love PK. But I think it kills PK deep down inside that my opinion does matter. I think when I left the radio station, he was hopeful that my opinion would never matter again. And I think what's happened is, again, I say things and the whole Cam board is a bust conversation. That would have never happened if it wasn't for me. So what I think happens is it's the opinions of the people on the radio station that don't matter as much. And I still think in the, social media vacuum landscape that we live in today, the digital realm, I think my opinion matters. But that's him, not me. But PK was getting all worked up today about me and talking about how he's just a fan. I mean, he watches the games on TV. He doesn't go into the locker room. He doesn't. And I'm like, okay. I'm like, fine. But I want the Titans to be good. That's what I care about. I want the Titans to be good. I didn't say I want the Titans to win the Super Bowl, though I do want the Titans to win the Super Bowl. And every suggestion I've given to the Titans, whether it's getting rid of Rand Carthon, whether it's blowing up the front office each of the last 3 years, every suggestion I've given to the Titans is out of the heart of wanting the Titans to be good again. And I was thinking about this in the political sense. Do you know what side of the aisle I lie on? Republican or Democrat? Because even though I vote, I don't vote the same way every time. I also don't look at my own party and think that the party that I do vote for more often than not is always right. For instance, I disagree with Republican and Democratic policies. I didn't like Barack Obama's foreign policy when it came to Syria and Russia annexing Crimea. And I don't like Donald Trump's tariffs. I didn't like Joe Biden's immigration policy. And I don't like ICE running around and just taking people off the street. There have been very good Republican presidents in my experience over time. Again, I was about to say in my lifetime, but Abraham Lincoln, for instance, was not in my lifetime. There are plenty of good Republican presidents and plenty of good Democratic presidents. There are plenty of bad Republican presidents and bad Democratic presidents. Again, if I don't like an individual policy, whether or not that's what my party decides they want, does that make me a bad person? Again, I was walking around San Diego 2 years ago, and a guy just dropped his pants in the middle of the street. And I think this was somebody with a serious mental illness. The guy just dropped his pants, took his dick out, and just peed right there on the middle of the street. And I thought, what's going on in these cities? I cannot like that. It's okay, regardless of how you vote or don't vote. And so, again, when I tell you that I don't like certain things that Republicans do, and I don't like certain things that Democrats do, I said, so what does that make me? And I'd like to say that makes me an American, because that's who I root for. I root for the American economy, whether it's a Democratic president or a Republican president. I root for the American people. I root for America when we play Canada in the Four Nations face-off. I root for America in the Olympics. That's just how I'm wired. Now, I have my opinion on what's going to give America the best chance to succeed. And you may not always agree with that, but I feel like in our politics, we have just diverged so much into tribalism, my team versus your team, red team versus blue team, that it has now become, no, I don't want America to thrive when the president is of the party that is opposite mine. And I think that's ridiculous. And for some reason, I think a lot of you, when it comes to the Titans, you look at it like my team is always right. My team is always great. My team is, that's what I see. Well, my quarterback is Cam Ward. So even though Cam Ward cannot hit the broad side of a barn, I'm going to make excuses every week for why Cam Ward's not any good. But all that does is make you wait longer and longer and longer until the Titans can actually be good again, which is all I care about. And yet, we're just going to ignore everything negative about Cam. We're going to go into this offseason. We're going to tell some narrative to ourselves that it's all the coach's fault. It's all the roster's fault. It's all J-Rob's fault. It's all Rand Carthon's fault. It's all Brian Callahan's fault. It's all everybody else's fault. And not one person inside that building is going to call it like it is, which is, you fucked up last year and you picked a quarterback who's not very good. That's what it is. And again, is there a chance I'm wrong about this? Yeah, there's a chance I'm wrong. But I thought this before Cam Ward took the field against the Denver Broncos. I thought this before they drafted Cam Ward with the first overall pick and turned down the Giants trade. That doesn't mean I can't be wrong. But right now, through 13 games, I think one thing is abundantly clear. Cam Ward stinks. And you guys have got to understand that, you know what, the path out of this might be without Cam. So that's the first thing. Again, a former general manager who's got a Super Bowl ring told me Cam stinks. Rick Spielman tried to tell everybody before he went to go back into the league to work for the Jets. He tried to tell everybody Cam stinks. Thomas Dimitrov, when he was working for Sumer Sports, he tried to tell everybody. He said, hey, I'm a trade up guy, but they got to trade back. The Titans took Cam Ward. They unretired Warren Moon's number for him, and he stinks. And so if you want the Titans to be good again, you guys have got to actually get a clue. This organization has to get a clue as to whether he's any good. And again, this is not about me rooting for my opinion. It's not about opinions. Think about this. If you went to the ballot box to place your vote, and let's say you voted for the Democratic president, and somebody told you that day, the Republican candidate is going to win, but America will absolutely thrive in every way. The economy will be booming. Jobs will be great. The foreign policy, America will be respected around the world. E-commerce, trade, healthcare, it'll all be fixed. Now, the candidate you're voting for is going to lose, but everything's going to end up great. Would you say, okay? Or would you say, no, I don't like that guy I voted for? And if you're somebody that said, no, I didn't like that guy I didn't vote for, then you've lost all sense of what matters. And I feel the same way when it comes to the Titans. I want Cam to be good. I just now have enough evidence he's not going to be. And this organization's not going to help him. And so we can keep wasting years of our lives. We've already wasted years. Again, we had to give Rand Carthon another chance, and it has cost us this year and last year giving Rand Carthon another chance. We had to give Brian Callahan another chance, and it has already cost us this year. And maybe cost us Cam Ward's career. So that's where we sit. That's the first thing. And then PK got all mad at me. We'll get to that in a second. First, I want to tell you about Hiller Plumbing, Heating, Cooling, and Electrical. I love Hiller. They take great care of my home, and they can take great care of yours. They've been in business since 1990. They are family-owned and operated with 100% satisfaction of happy you'll be, or the service is free. If a customer isn't pleased with the work performed, they'll make it right. You can learn more at happyhiller.com with professional, experienced, trustworthy technicians who come into your home and leave it clean and better than they found it. Care is their core value, where they believe that when they care about others, everybody wins. And they will take care of the customer on every job, every time. That's Hiller Plumbing, Heating, Cooling, and Electrical. That's who I use in my home. You should use them in your home as well. Proud supporters of the Predators, the Vols, and the Vanderbilt Commodores. That's Hiller. Call the Happy Face Truck today. Okay, so PK's all mad at me. And this stems again from me yesterday saying on the program, you should be allowed to root for the Titans to lose. You should be allowed. It's in the best interest of the Titans to lose. And PK gets all mad at anybody who thinks that way, especially when it's me. Here's what he said today on A Football Show with Braden Gall.
You've got 4 games left with this guy. Well, for those next guys to be any good, the quarterback they're playing with has to be better. And for the quarterback to be better, he needs game experience and to play better. When's he going to play better? In the spring when he's working on his footwork? That's going to help him. But that's not football. The football's now. We wait 32 weeks a year for the football, which is unfolding now. So if you want to root for them to lose, you can do what you want. But it doesn't make logical sense in the development of the football team you claim to be a fan of for you to sit there and root for things not to go well. And then what are you going to do next year when they still have holes? Oh, I loved this package of picks that they got when they traded out of number 1 or number 2, but don't play well because I need more good players next year. So don't develop. Everybody freeze because I want more high picks. See a circular nonsense?
Yeah. Okay. So I understand what Paul's saying, but I think he's missing the nuance here. And I did love how Paul was like, hey, the fan watching on TV. He doesn't even go into the locker room. So let's unpack this. First off, I want the Titans to win. There is no other ulterior motive with me. I've said this. My dad is 74 years old, and I want 1 Super Bowl. That's it. I just want he and I to enjoy 1 Super Bowl together. Now, I don't know if that's going to happen. I hope my dad lives forever. I don't know if that's going to happen. But I want 1. But here's what bothers me. And this also bothers me when it comes to Paul talking about how, this guy doesn't talk to players in the locker room. This guy's not around players and coaches. Well, I did do a show every day with the best general manager the Titans have ever had. I did do the pregame show. We won awards. We actually won an award. Derek Mason, Chris Sanders, and I won an award in which Chase McCabe put his name on the trophy. So I've been around former players. My best friend is the athletic director of a Power 4 school. A guy I grew up with is the head coach at Kentucky, and I've talked to him pretty much every day for the last month. So when you say things like, well, he's not around players, he doesn't understand, I'd like to say I got the best education, and Ian Safar got the best education I think we could get, and that was going to football school every day with the old man. And what the old man talked about was every year the goal is to compete for the playoffs. And I've taken that to heart. The way the old man looked at it was the best you can expect to do is to compete for the playoffs. And then it's going to be 1 or 2 plays in 3 or 4 games that decide whether or not you end up 10-7 and in the playoffs or 7-10 and at home. And I have respected that, and I understand it, which is why I wasn't ready to tear it down when the Titans were 2-4 in 2023 and traded away Kevin Byard. Because even though that team was getting older and needed future draft picks, they were 2-4, the same record the 2019 Titans were when, with the same coach, with the same quarterback, with Derrick Henry, they ended up in the AFC title game. So I wasn't waving the white flag in 2023. But at the end of the day, we have to look at this team for what it is. This is a terrible football team with almost no talent on it. And the reality in the NFL is, if you want good, young, uninjured, affordable talent, you have to draft it. And the best players in the draft come within the top 60 picks of the draft. That's just a fact. So you need more picks. And there's only two ways for you to get more picks. You trade the first pick, or you trade Jeffrey Simmons. And the Titans have already said, we're not going to trade Jeffrey Simmons. So now what am I supposed to do? And I know what Paul's saying, which is, as a Titan fan, your team drafted this quarterback number 1 overall. And we want to see this number 1 quarterback develop. But did it look like on Sunday against the Browns, like Cam developed? Again, if Cam had the game that Shedeur had, 364 passing yards, a PFF grade of 75, 3 big-time throws, 4 total touchdowns, if Cam Ward had the game that Shedeur had and the Titans won, that would be one thing. But Cam was Cam's old crappy self that he's been for pretty much every game this year except for the Seattle game. And yet, we're supposed to like it. So Cam didn't even play well. The Titans won because the Browns made a bunch of mistakes. Tony Pollard went off, who's not going to be on the team next year. And I'm supposed to be like, yay! What good does that do the Titans? My logic for not wanting the Titans to win on Sunday is as simple as I think they have to get the number 1 pick. Because if I have to have Cam Ward as my quarterback, which again, I didn't want to do, I wanted to trade the pick this past year, then I'm going to have to build a great team around Cam Ward. And in order to have a great team around Cam Ward, I'm going to have a bunch of picks. And I'm going to have to spend a bunch of money in free agency. Again, how do I get more picks? I either have the number 1 overall pick and trade it, or I trade Jeffrey Simmons, which they say they're not going to do. I also think Paul is smart enough to know the nuance between not every game matters and this team has been completely dead in the water since week 3, which is where this football team has been each of the last 2 seasons. Again, I did not feel this way when the Titans were 2-4 in 2023, that tanking was a good idea. Because I thought that team at 2-4 still had a shot to compete for a playoff spot. And at the end of the day, the goal is to compete for the playoffs. That's why I thought it was absurd when John Robinson got fired in the middle of the season, because that team was competing for the playoffs every year. Again, the general manager who built a team that competed for the playoffs every year, he's not good enough, but I need to root for them to win when they're the worst team in the league in meaningful games against Cleveland's 4th-string quarterback. Huh? And I'd love to see the development of Cam Ward. And the development of Cam Ward can equal one of 2 things. 1, wins. And 2, that I'm wrong. Because if Cam Ward does become a franchise quarterback, you people will tar and feather me, and that's okay. But again, we didn't see that on Sunday. We did not see any difference on Sunday between the Cam Ward that loses every week and the Cam Ward that won last week. We saw a Browns team that completely puked the game away, where the running back lit it up, who's not going to be on the team next year. So what was positive about what happened on Sunday? Like, what am I supposed to root for on Sunday? Again, Taylor Zarzour is telling me that the most important thing is that this team learns how to win. Taylor? I don't know Taylor Zarzour, so I can't tell you if he's smart enough to know this or not. What happens in 2025 as far as winning a game versus losing a game is not going to have any effect on 2026. I'm sorry. That's just how it is. And everybody who's saying that, just like PK, they're acting like they didn't live through 2015 where they got the number 1 pick and they turned that number 1 pick into a bunch of core players that helped this football team compete for the next season and beyond. Or like they didn't live through 2023 where they won at Miami, dropped the number 7, and it cost them Joe Alt. I remember when they won the game at Miami and I said, this is good because Will Levis needs this for his confidence. And I will trade the draft positioning in order to get that win at Miami. And in the end, I'd rather have Joe Alt. And again, haven't been around coaches and players. What are we talking about? I did this show for 5 years with the best general manager the Titans have ever had. And every time I bring up something that he told me and apply it to the situation, it's always like, oh, no, the game is different. Jared, the Titans don't need a right tackle. Please don't tell us that story anymore. If the Titans had a prayer at the playoffs, and I mean a prayer, for instance, during the games on Fox and CBS, they'll show up the playoff graphic, and the Miami Dolphins are 6-7, and they're in the hunt, then I would root for the Titans to win. But they don't have a prayer at the playoffs. Not only that, they're completely eliminated. If they had a prayer for the playoffs or they were competing for something, then I would do whatever it takes to win a game. But I'm also smart enough to look at it right now and say, this team is not that. So that's the second thing. Again, I don't understand where this brought us to this just belief that when it comes to the Titans, that, oh no, Jared, you don't understand. Oh, Jared, you should want to win every game. Yeah, and if they win every game, they're not going to make the playoffs. What good does that do for you? Again, I went into the season, I knew they weren't going to be very good, but I wasn't completely certain of it. I mean, I guess technically anything is possible. So if they had started off 3-0, you think I wouldn't have been sitting there saying, hey, let's lose though, because we're no, I'd say, yes, this is great. It's awesome. It's so unexpected. But with this team, there is nothing to win. There's nothing to gain. And you can see Cam Ward develop in losses, and that's good. But we just saw the Titans win a game in which Cam Ward didn't show any progress. So give me a break. That's the second thing. The third thing, how about old man Phillip Rivers? I mean, again, I told the story yesterday on the show when I was arguing that the Colts should call Ryan Tannehill. And I told the story that 2 years ago, when Brock Purdy tore up his elbow in the NFC title game, Kyle Shanahan said that had they won that NFC title game at Philadelphia, they would have signed Phillip Rivers, given him 2 weeks to get in the best shape he could have gotten into, and said, all right, Phillip Rivers, you're the quarterback, and we're taking on the Chiefs in the Super Bowl. Obviously, that didn't have to happen. But I told that story because in 2023, Phillip Rivers had been out for a couple of years, and at that point in the season, with all these quarterbacks already on teams' rosters and trading deadline having passed, and that's probably the best you could do. And I argued yesterday that Ryan Tannehill would have been the best choice for the Colts, of people that are out there that they can sign to go on a team that's competing for the playoffs, that is not thinking about the future because they have no first-round picks, that really needs a quarterback to manage the game. And I think Ryan Tannehill gives you a better chance to win right now than Riley Leonard. And then last night, reports started coming out that Phillip Rivers was being mentioned with the Colts. And I thought, what? Now look, do I think the Colts would have won the Super Bowl with Ryan Tannehill? No. And do I think the Colts are going to win the Super Bowl with Phillip Rivers? No. But I do think this. I do believe that Phillip Rivers gives the Colts a better chance to win right now than Riley Leonard. And the Colts have pushed their chips into the middle. And once you push your chips in, you've got to see it through. Indianapolis, I applaud them for signing Phillip Rivers. Because what they're telling Jonathan Taylor and what they're telling Michael Pittman and what they're telling their defense and what they're telling their fan base and what they're telling everybody is, we're going to do everything we can. And at this point in the year, with the trade deadline being behind us, at this point in the year, with pretty much everybody who's got a pulse having been signed, Phillip Rivers, even at 44 years old, is probably the best of a bad situation. He gives them a better chance to win than Riley Leonard or a practice squad quarterback. That said, I would have gone with Tannehill. Now, I'm sure there's probably more scheme familiarity with Rivers than with Tannehill. Again, Shane Steichen, I believe, comes from the Chargers. I know he was with the Eagles, but I think he was with Frank Reich and the Chargers. So they've got a history with Phillip Rivers, which they would not have with Ryan Tannehill. For instance, if this were the Chicago Bears, where Ben Johnson was in Miami, or this were the Detroit Lions, where Dan Campbell was the interim head coach in Miami with Ryan Tannehill, I could see Ryan Tannehill going there. I still think I would rather have gone with Tannehill, who is 2 years removed from playing and significantly younger than Rivers, than a 44-year-old Rivers who hasn't played in 5 years. But I cannot fault the Colts for going this route. I have no idea what the expectation should be for Indianapolis down the stretch. My expectation is Riley Leonard plays this week, and then Phillip Rivers plays next week. So how about old man Phillip Rivers? And I'll say this, good for Phillip Rivers. If you want to play, go play. But at the same time, I don't want to pretend like Phillip Rivers is going to win a bunch of games. I mean, they're going to do the best they can with him. So, I don't know, maybe they called Tannehill and Tannehill said no thank you. But I was a little surprised that they went the Rivers route, given how old Rivers is and how far removed from playing Rivers is. But I am not surprised that this is the desperate measure that Indianapolis has to take, because these are desperate times. So how about old man Phillip Rivers? And then I want to get to this Will Bolling story before I get to your reaction on the text line, because a lot of people want to get in on this. So I was unaware of this until after the show yesterday. Apparently, Will Bolling is the Titans road sideline reporter. I don't understand why the Titans, who only play 17 games a year, have a road sideline reporter and a home sideline reporter. I mean, again, I know Amy Wells probably doesn't want to do all the traveling, but it's 9 days a year. You can handle that. Everybody else in the world travels 9 days a year for their job. This is not baseball or hockey or basketball where you're gone for 3 weeks at a time for half the year. But again, that's a different discussion for a different day. So apparently Will Bolling on his morning show on 104.5 told a story about what went down on the Titans plane. And I don't listen to that show, so I didn't hear it, but I did see the Easton Freeze story, in which Easton Freeze at A to Z Sports reported, quote, on the 104.5 The Zone morning show, Ramon and Will, Titans sideline reporter Will Bolling shared this quick story from the team plane ride home Sunday evening. Again, let me add that emphasis there. The team plane ride home Sunday. Quote, on the plane ride home, Bolling told co-host Ramon Foster, Arden Key gets on the intercom and says, you all enjoy this. Don't listen to what Cam said. You all enjoy this. It's hard to win in this league. Enjoy it. Bolling emphasized that Key, a resident comedian on this roster, was just giving Ward a hard time, but there's truth in every joke. So where's this coming from? What did Cam say after the game to harsh the good vibes? And I read that yesterday afternoon after I got off the show. And my immediate reaction when I read that was, dude, you can't say what happens on the team plane. Like, everybody knows that. You don't talk about what happens on the team plane. Like, that is the number one rule. I've known that since I was 19 years old. You do not talk about what happens on the team plane. You don't talk about who's on it. You don't talk about who's not on it. You don't talk about who's drinking on it. You don't talk about who's gambling on it. You don't talk about what people are eating on it. You don't talk about who's getting treatment on it. You don't talk about who's yelling at each other on it. You don't say shit about that plane if you're on it. Now, let's say a coach and another coach get into a big altercation, and somebody off the record tells a reporter who's not on the plane, the reporter is within his rights to report it. But if it's one of these situations, which do happen, whether it's crazy travel situations or adverse weather or where sometimes a media member will take the plane, the number one rule is you don't report shit about what happens on that plane. So I saw that yesterday, and that was my initial thought, was you don't talk about what happens on the plane. Like, you can't do that. Like, what? And then what's crazy about this story is that was my initial thought, and then I completely forgot about it. Like, again, how much do I care about what Will Bolling says? I mean, I don't think Will Bolling's a very good talk show host. I don't even know if Will Bolling really wants to be a talk show host. He seems like one of these guys that's doing it because he wants to be in the media, but he probably wants to be more like a play-by-play guy anyways. I have no idea. He's not a very good talk show host. I think he's pretty boring. He does the sidelines on Titans radio because he's safe, because the Titans know that he's not going to go out there and say, yeah, Cam Ward sucks, or they're going to say that Burke Nihill should be fired or anything like that, and that's fine. But again, this is an absolute no-no. And I saw Kaharski put it out there yesterday, just his amazement that everybody should be completely offended by Will Bolling breaking what is one of the highest commandments of traveling with the team. And the reason I bring this up is because I do wonder what the Titans are going to do about this. That's a huge violation of trust. Now, granted, the Arden Key story is not the same as what people are truly worried about when it comes to talking about what goes down on the plane. What people are worried about when they say, hey, don't ever repeat anything that happens on that plane. Everything on that plane is completely off the record. That is a blanket rule. And that blanket rule is to protect guys fighting on the plane, guys gambling on the plane, guys drinking on the plane, guys smoking on the plane, guys fucking people they shouldn't be fucking on the plane. That's what it's there to protect. But at the same time, that's the rule. Personally, if I were the Titans, now look, again, I don't think Will Bolling's all that big of a deal. I don't think he's very talented. So, I mean, if I got rid of him, it wouldn't be the end of the world. If I were the Titans, I would have to kick Will Bolling off the plane. Whether that means Amy Wells has to now do the road games, which I'm sure she doesn't want to do, but whether that means Amy Wells has to do the road games or Will Bolling has to fly southwest to Sheboygan to transfer over so that he can get, I don't even know where they play the rest of the year, Jacksonville on time, so be it. Like, that's just what we have to do. Like, that's just how it is. And I do not think that the Titans would be outside of their skis if they let Will Bolling go off of Titans radio over this. Because once again, there have to be standards. Like, there have to be rules. And if you have rules, you have to enforce them. What I think will happen is I think Will Bolling will get a talking to, and the Titans won't do anything about it, which is exactly the issue with the Tennessee Titans in general. And that is that they don't have standards. They have rules, but are they going to hold anybody accountable when they break them? They have standards. They say they have standards, but are they going to do anything about it when the quarterback comes out and second guesses the coach after a game? This is what the Titans have become in the post-Mike Vrabel era. is the Titans just let anybody do anything and nobody says anything about it until it's too late. Brian Callahan let everybody do what they wanted to do, and even though Callahan pushed back on it, that was the truth. And nobody said anything about it. They all got behind the Pee Wee program until it was too late. They unretire Warren Moon's number. They compare Cam Ward to Mahomes, and nobody says anything about it until Cam Ward goes out and performs like the worst quarterback in the league. That's what they do. Rand Carthon was a terrible general manager. Again, the stories PK told about his laziness, about the fact that he left Kentucky's pro day early. That happened when Mike Vrabel was still the coach. And yet, they promoted him. They don't hold anybody accountable until they absolutely have to. Again, what's Chad Brinker been held accountable for? You tell me. So, again, I don't know here's what can't happen. This is me. Will Bolling can't fly with the team the rest of the year. Whether that means somebody else does that job and they fly, or Will Bolling has to fly commercial, that's on them. But he can't fly with the team for the rest of the year. You have to enforce that rule. Again, it was not a felony what he went up there and said. It's not like he was on the radio and he was telling people, hey, on the back of the plane, Johnny Joe was smoking a joint, and then he got all upset, and then Bobby Ray, who had 8 vodkas, came back and he threw a right hook, and you can't. That's why that rule exists. But you can't have the rule and then not enforce it and then say, oh, no, it's fine. And Paul's right. Again, anybody who has worked in sports knows you do not talk about what happens on the plane. What happens on the plane, you have to save until every single person that was on that plane or in the story you're going to tell is out of any sort of capacity to get fired or get in trouble. And then you can tell it on a podcast if you're sitting down with Theo Vaughn 8 years after the fact. Bussin' with the Boys can talk about what happened on the plane 9 years ago. But you can't talk about what happens on the plane yesterday. You just can't do that. Okay, let's get to some of your reaction here on the program. Titans fan 28101, whoever the hell that is, says, Jared, please talk about the Titans' elite weapons. I'll hang up and listen. Why does a quarterback have to have elite weapons to not suck? And I would also like to point out, sometimes even when a quarterback has elite weapons, they still suck. J.J. McCarthy sucks. He has elite weapons. And sometimes quarterbacks make elite weapons a lot better. Lindsey's had Justin Jefferson in fantasy this year. He hasn't done anything because they don't have anybody that can get him the ball. Jackson Smith and Jigba was good last year. He's Jerry Rice this year. Why? Because they have somebody who can get him the ball. There is a big difference between the two. Joe says, Borgonzi's got some explaining to do. That is if everybody makes Borgonzi do the explaining. The truth is, I think they swung and missed on Ward. And I think it's pretty obvious. Every week, Cam Ward looks like he doesn't have a clue out there playing quarterback. Again, he got absolutely outplayed by Shedeur Sanders. And you can make whatever excuse you want. You people make plenty of them for Cam every week. But he got outplayed by a guy who was picked 144th. There should be an explanation for that. Well, this roster that we brought him to, they're not very good. Well, why didn't you make that roster better? Do you think he can just be bad and that he's not going to have his confidence rocked? Like he's going to be bad, good. It doesn't work like that. Well, Josh Allen was bad, and yes. And Josh Allen's team had made the playoffs the year before, and they had a top 5 defense in the NFL. Josh Allen, even his second year when he wasn't very good, made the playoffs. Cam's won 2 games. Adam in Portland, you're not making a very solid point. Tell me an NFL quarterback, now or former, that could take this team to the playoffs or leave Cam the fuck alone. I think Tom Brady could get this team to the playoffs. I mean, go back to that last Tampa Bay team they had. They were not very good at all. They were very injured. I think Tom Brady could get this team to the playoffs. There are guys on this team who would play better if Tom Brady was the quarterback. because Tom Brady would make them play better. Now, again, does that mean that I think they win the Super Bowl with Brady? No. But, I mean, I think they'd be better with Tom Brady as their quarterback. Peyton Manning with the Denver Broncos won the Super Bowl when he couldn't even feel his fingertips anymore. And the next year, they had all the same players on defense, and they didn't even make the playoffs. Why? Because even Peyton in his elder state mattered. That's important now. One guy says, trust me, nothing you can say to me about Cam Ward, I don't know. I'm probably the least Tennessee Titans fan at the current stage of the fan base that isn't meat riding Cam Ward. You know, I think it's crazy that like these Titan fans, it's like, well, whoever the team takes, whoever the team hires, I am going to believe in. And I think there's a difference between root for and believe in. I root for whoever the Titans draft. I root for whoever the general manager is. I root for the coach. But I don't believe in them. I have no belief in Chad Brinker. And I've had some talks with Chad Brinker over the years. As a guy to guy, like, again, I want Chad Brinker fired, but guy to guy, I like Chad Brinker. Like, I know that's crazy for you to think, but it's true. But it's just like, hey, man, this is business. It's not personal. In business, you're screwing up the football team. Go. But I actually like Chad Brinker, the guy. So I'm rooting for you, but I don't believe in you. And that's okay. I'm rooting for Cam, but I don't believe in him. And I don't feel the need to make a bunch of excuses. Adam in Portland. Borgonzi hit on 4 picks in his first year while in a toxic environment. But yeah, let's fire that fucking dude. Why not? If Jared says so, it must be correct. So I'm going to tell you this. I would fire Borgonzi. I would clean house. And that's not a knock on Borgonzi. The reason I say I would fire Borgonzi is I don't think he's done enough good in order to justify staying when I think everybody else needs to go. Brinker, the coaching staff, etc. Borgonzi's flagship move was Cam Ward, and I don't think that looks very good. And this team is worse than they were last year, and yet there has to be no explanation for that other than, oh yeah, Brian Callahan was a bad coach. I don't have that one in me. Taylor says, Jared, if this is what 1 year looks like for Cam Ward, what will the sophomore slump look like next year? You know, I'm going to stop making predictions because a couple years ago, I said there's no way the Titans offensive line will be worse than the year before. And this was the year where the Titans had Andre Dillard at left tackle and Aaron Brewer at center, moves I didn't necessarily like. And then PT got suspended. And I'm like, look, I'm going to say it can't be worse than Dennis Daly and company last year. And it was absolutely worse than the year before. So I stopped saying things like that. So I'm not going to say there's no way it can't be worse with Cam. I don't make the assumption that a lot of people make, which is get Cam a good coach and then let's see. Well, now you're banking on Brinker and Borgonzi to go out and get a good coach, which I'm not convinced they're going to do. So I can't tell you what next year is going to look like. I can tell you what I hope next year looks like, which is I hope Cam looks better. I hope Cam sets his feet before he throws. But I don't know that's going to be the case. Kelsey says River is probably better than Tannehill, possibly getting a boatload of money too. Well, he's being signed to the practice squad, but I guess you can pay a practice squad guy whatever you want. I'm sure Rivers is not coming for free. I think at this point, though, Tannehill's better than Rivers. I mean, Tannehill, I thought about this last night. Rivers was drafted in 2004. Tannehill was drafted in 2012. Tannehill was drafted 8 years after Phillip Rivers. Now, not everybody's the same age when they get drafted, but he's 7 or 8 years younger than Phillip Rivers. And he played 2 years ago. Rivers hasn't played in 5. Personally, I don't think it's much of a discussion. I think Tannehill is the better quarterback. When Phillip Rivers retired, Ryan Tannehill was better than him. I would have signed Tannehill. One person says, makes you wonder if people who claim to be Titans fans are just fans of Cam Ward or anyone that comes out of the U, which is fine. College is college, but last time I checked, it's a team sport. Again, we all want the same thing. We want the Titans to win. It's just the way that you guys go about it is everything they do is going to work, Jared. And the way I go about it is don't do these things that aren't going to work. That's the difference. Alex says, what if the Titans and Cam could become compelling? I think that is a good next step. How refreshing and compelling and competitive football would be after this terrible year. I mean, if they do, great. Here's the question. What you've seen out of Cam, what makes you think that's going to happen? That's where I struggle. I'm not sure they're going to get to that. Kyle says, working with a former general manager, you worship former general managers. It ruined you. No, it just makes me understand what I don't know. And I've learned a lot over the years on that front. You know, there's a lot of people that think doctors don't know what they're doing. Where it's like, oh, the doctors. What do doctors know? I think doctors know a lot. That doesn't mean every doctor's right all the time. And that doesn't mean every doctor's a good doctor. But in general, when you've got a cold, doctors probably know what it is. And doctors probably know how to treat it better than your grandma and her old recipe. But yet there are so many people out there that just detest doctors, detest those who are educated, detest those with knowledge. And I don't totally understand why that is. Now, that doesn't mean that I care what every former general manager says. I think Rand Carthon's incompetent. But the general manager I worked with has the team record of 111 wins. The general manager that I worked with built a Super Bowl team. The general manager I know was the one who used to say things that I used to push back on, and I look back now and I'm like, oh my God, he was right. One time after he died, I was having a hard time listening to Jared and the GM podcast, but then I got into it a little bit and I'd reminisce, and I remember being on a walk and I was listening to an old Jared and the GM podcast. And this was back when LSU ended up hiring Ed Orgeron as their head coach, and there was talk about Jimbo Fisher, and Floyd was like, if LSU really wants Jimbo Fisher, they can get Jimbo Fisher. And I said, what do you mean? And he said, well, when it comes to Jimbo Fisher, they'll just pay more than Florida State can bet. And I said, well, they're not going to be able to do that. They're not. He said, yes, they are. And we pushed back and forth. And I'm walking along thinking, oh my God, that's exactly what happened. Texas A&M just paid more than Florida State was willing to pay, and Jimbo Fisher went to A&M. The old man was right. Jared was wrong. And there were a lot of moments like that where I realized, my God, the old man was right. Now, the old man wasn't right about everything. He wasn't right about everything when he was GM. But he sure as shit knew a whole lot more than you did. And he definitely knows a lot more than I do. And so when I hear a guy like Rick Spielman, who built the team that went to the NFC title game and drafted Justin Jefferson and Christian Darrisaw and everything else, and he's sitting there saying, this guy's Tyrod Taylor, that matters to me. It doesn't mean everything, but it means something. One person says, and I do want to go over this because I think there's a nuance that's missed here. Speaking of talking about what happened on team planes, didn't PK take Rand down with that sleeping on the plane comment? So here's the difference. Paul was not on that plane. So when it comes to reporting something that happens on a plane, that is a reporter's job. When you as a reporter fly on the team plane, you are waiving the right to report anything that happens on that plane. Paul was not on that plane where Rand Carthon was sleeping. So that is fair game. If Paul has that story, that is fair game for Paul to report. Now, there have been instances, both in my career with a team and in my career as a media guy. There have been instances where there is inclement weather or there is really, really bad travel issues or timing issues in which a media person will fly with the team. You know, sometimes it's like, hey, there's a 3-day turnaround here and the media guy needs to get home. So there's an ice storm. We can land the team plane, but he's not going to be able to get a commercial plane out. So this guy's going to fly on the team plane. And if you've ever been in that spot, and I've been on both sides of this, I've been a media guy flying on the team plane, and I've been with the team flying on the plane where media people come on. There is an understanding when a media person flies with the team. There is an understanding that, hey, you don't bother him, he doesn't bother you. The media guy is not going to talk about what happens on that plane. So be yourself, but also don't go up to the guy and say, I saw what you wrote about me in the paper. Don't do that. And that's just, I thought, unspoken about how things go down on the planes. But I guess not. I mean, for instance, Adam Vingan, when he used to cover the Predators for the Tennessean and he would go to a bunch of road games, he would fly commercial 95% of the time. But I'm sure there were some times where the team would play in Calgary and they'd fly right back because they had a game the next day at home, or they had a game that he may fly with the team. But Adam's not going to write anything in the paper about what happened on that plane because those are the rules. Now, if Adam was not on the team plane or Adam was not on the team bus and there was a fight between two players and a team source goes to Adam and tells him about it, Adam can report. Do you see the difference? So the one last thing I do want to hit on, Diego Pavia has been named a Heisman finalist. That is the first time Vanderbilt will ever have a football player in New York for the Heisman Trophy. I hope he wins. But I'm glad that at least him being there shows some recognition of the growth Vandy football has made. Because as I saw them talking about all the teams that had a beef with the playoff on ESPN and College Game Day, I never saw them talk about Vandy, who I think has a better resume than Miami. And yet, it's almost like this great season was for naught. But if Diego Pavia wins the Heisman Trophy, then that will mean that Vanderbilt had their breakthrough moment and their greatest season ever. And I think that's great for everybody. So congratulations to Pavia. If I had a vote, it would be Pavia 1, Mendoza 2, Jeremiah Love 3. I think Mendoza's going to win, but I don't know. So that's going to do it for us. We are out of here today. Great show. Like and subscribe. Thank you to Hiller Plumbing, Heating, Cooling, and Electrical. We are live back here tomorrow